So you've got a lot of things going on, Max. In fact, I was over at your Twitter feed, and I always wanted to show people what's going on. Some people are screwing with you. So, just like they have fact check organizations aren't actually fact check organizations. They're funded somewhere by a billionaire somewhere, and they're pushing point of view and propaganda. And so that's why John Stossel sued Facebook's fact checkers, or Facebook, because of a bogus fact check. And Facebook had to admit that their fact checkers aren't actually fact checkers, and that they're just people with points of view. Which we know. So now the same thing's happening here. So now they're coming after the Grayzone, right? So they have a pretend organization made up of some of the worst people in the world, and they're supposed to be the people who are going to accreditate real independent news journalists and let you know if they're on the up and up. Wait till you find out who the people are. Hang on. So I just want to show you what's happening. So it's a place called the Newsguard Rating, and they sent you an email, and I want to read it to the people. Hi, I am a reporter with Newsguard, a service that reviews news and information websites for credibility and transparency. These reviews, which include a written summary and a checklist of 9 criteria, are intended to help readers have more context for the news they read online. I'm currently working on a review of the Grayzone.com, and I have a few questions about the site, specifically regarding its ownership and financing and some recently published claims that appear to be false. Is someone available to discuss these topics with me over an email or phone?
You got to sound dweebier than that.
As a heads up, we incorporate quotes from our correspondences into our published reviews, so this conversation should be considered on the record. Thank you, Zach Fishman, staff analyst. Newsguard sounds like a comedy sketch. You responded by saying, Thanks for your email about your pending review of the Grayzone. It reminded us that our media culture has been so thoroughly corrupted and systematically degraded by sociopathic elites that an outfit like Newsguard can claim with a straight face to, quote, combat misinformation, end quote, and provide, quote, transparent, accountable trust ratings for thousands of news outlets. Do you seriously expect us to grovel for approval from the same tentacle of the national security state and financial oligarchy that has rated CNN as a highly credible news source and whose board of advisors is a grotesque gallery of corporate propagandists, spooks, documented liars, and war criminals who have never faced a scintilla of accountability for their actions? Your board of advisors includes Anders Fogh Rasmussen, the former NATO Secretary General who presided over the regime change war that transformed Libya from a prosperous, stable nation into a hellish site of literal slave auctions and ISIS havens, describing the murderous mission as a great success. Former CIA and NSA Director Michael Hayden, who oversaw the growth of secret torture and mass surveillance programs in partnership with Dick Cheney, Richard Stengel, the self-proclaimed chief propagandist of the State Department. These are all the people that are in this Newsguard. Arnie Duncan, one of my favorites. He was the Secretary of Education who never spent one day actually teaching kids in a classroom. Arnie Duncan, the privatization-hungry former Secretary of Education, who proclaimed that Hurricane Katrina was the best thing that happened to the education system in New Orleans because it literally wiped out the public schools there. Tom Ridge, who was a DHS secretary, deployed cartoonish color-coded terror alerts like Newsguard's media nutritional labels to frighten the U.S. public into line with Bush's catastrophic war on terror. They admitted that those color-coded terror alerts were politically manipulated. They admitted that. And John Battelle, co-founder of Wired magazine, which exists as a clearinghouse for the military intelligence apparatus and was launched with seed money from Jeffrey Epstein beneficiary Nicholas Negroponte, the younger brother of former director of national intelligence and documented Central American death squad overseer John Negroponte, please. Then you said the board of Newsguard is infested with War criminals, neocon propagandists, corporate lobbyists, spooks, and stenographers for power. Newsguard partners include the Pentagon, the Department of State, Microsoft, and a bunch of U.S. regime cutouts. So let me bring you in, Max, and what do you make of this?
Well, I think by reading my letter, you kind of said it all.
I mean, I know what you, but what do you, is like, talk about the push of censorship under the guise of respectability, and that's what they're trying to do here. That's their new thing, is they're going to try and now silence people, saying they're not credible. They're not a credible news organization, and that'll get them, censored from social media, just like the White House asked people to. It's like, hey, if they get banned from one social media, they should get banned from all of them. So this is just another push to do that under the guise, because that's what happens on Facebook. They go to the Atlantic Council, and the Atlantic Council tells Facebook and who to ban and stuff like that, and it's made up of a bunch of war criminals like Henry Kissinger. But go ahead, Max. Right.
Well, you did a segment on Barack Obama's speech at the Stanford Cyber Policy Center last week. Obama was there to push a vast and sweeping agenda to counter disinformation, with regime change guru and disinformation disseminator Michael McFaul sitting right there in the front row, nodding his head. And I mean, Barack Obama is no stranger to mis and disinformation himself, but he's very clever at papering over the real objective of the national security state and the dominant liberal or centrist wing of the U.S. elite, what they're aiming to do, which is to literally control reality. Reality is their ideology, and whatever they say is intended to seem objectively true and the essence of reality. And in order to control reality, they need to control the public commons, which happens to be privately controlled, social media, online media. And so they need to get their tentacles in there. And if you watch to the end of Obama's speech, what he's calling for is not for some dictatorship-like authoritarian, hard, open censorship. It's something more covert and insidious, because this is Obama, where the people in that room, who are basically a bunch of young future national security state, or I should say cyber security state drones who clap for everything he says, will basically be presiding over all of the major social media platforms and controlling the algorithms. Obama calls for the algorithms to be open, but only to those kinds of people, not to the public.
Right.
And Newsguard is of a part with this agenda. What they aim to do is not only to rate sites, but they have partnerships with corporate America, Microsoft, to get their ratings on every Microsoft computer in public schools, to get their ratings on every public library computer, which are supplied by Microsoft. So it's all contingent kind of on corporate control of public schools, which Microsoft has been pushing, which Microsoft's founder, Bill Gates, has been pushing, which Arnie Duncan has been pushing, and then controlling the minds of young people to scare them away from sites like the Grayzone. So what's happening here? Why did Newsguard contact us? Why did a front for the national security state and the financial oligarchy contact us for a review and try to bait me into groveling for approval and answering all of these questions as if I'm in some kind of court? They are going after us and a number of other anti-war and anti-imperialist sites, including Consortium News and antiwar.com. I'm pretty sure they're going after them as well. And they have already gone after our friends at Mint Press News. That was one of the first sites they targeted. And it's because we are a problem. We're independent sites. We're not Russian state affiliated. They can't just put that label on us. We're not affiliated with anything except ourselves and our grassroots audience. And we're saying things that are factual and are very inconvenient in the context of the Russia-Ukraine war. For example, we published a piece at the Grayzone last week. I was the co-author along with Esha Krishnaswamy, outlining all of the assassinations, kidnappings, and arrests of dissidents, leftists, and local officials in Ukraine, authorized by Vladimir Zelensky because they were seen as either pro-Russian or insufficiently nationalistic. that Zelensky is overseeing a Pinochet-like purge of his political opposition. And this piece got, on the first day it was published, 60,000 unique views. This is a problem for them. So they're going to give us a red rating. And they wanted to extract as much information from me as possible so they could, you know, further attack us. And you can see who's behind it. I mean, it's not just former spooks like Michael Hayden, the former CIA director who's on their board, or Tom Ridge, who's just became this laughing stock after his color codes. Their partner, listed partner, is one of the worst purveyors of violence, lies, and disinformation in human history. It's called the Pentagon, the U.S. Department of Defense. So how's anyone going to take this seriously? Why would I ever respond in good faith to this kind of request? Give me the red badge of honor. Give me your little red rating, and I will wear it as confirmation that we are a threat to the national security and oligarchic forces behind Newsguard and this entire vast censorship racket that Obama himself is now fronting for.
So there seems to be a ramp up of this kind of thing happening. And it started with part of it is you can see it with Barack Obama giving that speech, right? So they got to get that guy out, right? So he's likable to all the people that they have to convince that censorship is good. And so he did it. And that's what Barack Obama is. If anything, he's a servant of the establishment and the oligarchy, which is why he was allowed to become president in the first place and why he got more money from Wall Street than his Republican opponent. And his whole cabinet, which WikiLeaks revealed, was chosen by an email from Citigroup. So that's what people don't realize. That's the game that's being played. And they're coming. Well, here you tweeted this out about this is the article about Mint Press that came from Mint Press News. Newsguard is deeply connected to the U.S. government, neoconservatives, and powerful moneyed interests, working overtime since the 2016 election to silence dissent to American forever wars and corporate-led oligarchy. And that's the here's the article. How a neocon-backed fact-checker plans to wage war on independent media, and that's by Whitney Webb. That's a great read. That's from 2019. And here's what Caitlin Johnstone says. She said, it must be the most soul-destroying thing in the world to go to journalism school, study hard, graduate in front of your whole family, work hard building up a resume, get a steady job, and then find yourself writing hit pieces about disobedient YouTubers for the Daily Beast. That's very well said. And then you retweeted that, and you said, this perfectly describes Z.B. Fishman. That's the guy who's trying to write the
Zach Fishman.
Or Zach B. Fishman. He's the guy who's writing the article on you. The recent Medi, what do you call him? Medi journalist? What is that?
Medill is the school of journalism that's based, I think, in Northwestern University. So it's basically like a Ivy League level journalism school that he graduated from.
So that's at Northwestern in Chicago?
Exactly.
That's where the Jeff Bezos appointed Dave Weigel went to got his journalistic training over there, right? The guy who's the right winger who was pro Iraq war, who Jeff Bezos hired to cover progressive politics. Isn't that interesting? You would hire that. Why don't you hire Ted Cruz to cover progressive politics? So anyway, they both went to that same school. That's kind of interesting. So
you don't get trained in journalism school. You get indoctrinated along with fellow members of your class into conforming and advancing the objectives of the establishment's dominant wing.
There's two types of people who go to journalism school, right? There's suckers and shitty journalists. Okay.
I mean, what do you need to go to school for journalism?
That's like going. You don't need to. You just start doing it. It's like stand-up comedy. You just start doing it, and that's your school. You get on stage, just like journalism. You just start journaling. This perfectly describes this guy Fishman, the recent Medal journalist school graduate tasked by his national security state employers at Newsguard with smearing us and the other outlets that interrupted the U.S. regime's propaganda efforts. And this is what he looks like. There he is. Fantastic. Zach Fishman. There he is. Look at that. Yeah, look at Chicago. Isn't that nice? He got trained how to do propaganda and smear actual journalists. What his job is, he's rating the trustworthiness of news sites as a staff analyst at Newsguard rating. He's science journalism from 2020, I guess. Wow.
Wow. He's got a lot of experience to assess the trustworthiness of journalists who've been working for,
right? He's never done it.
Who are like twice his age, who've been working for 20 years. Like,
and he's taking cues from the fucking war criminals. But he's going to let you know who's a trustworthy journalist. That's fantastic. What is this? I have some more here. Oh, okay.
It's like in The Graduate, like if Dustin Hoffman's character had actually gone into plastics. That's who Zach Fishman and these characters are.
So you said Newsguard, like the corporate and national security state forces behind it, spreads absurdly constructed Ukraine war propaganda behind the guise of fighting misinformation. It's almost like they enjoy insulting our intelligence, and this is what Newsguard myth: Nazism is rampant in Ukraine politics and society, supported by the authorities in Kiev. That's a myth, according to Newsguard.
Because they say so.
Myth: the West staged a coup to overthrow the pro-Russian. That's a fuck. Like that's. I think, don't they admit it at this point, Max? The government. I mean, Kathleen Newland. I mean, Victoria Newland. Newsguard myth: the West staged a coup to over. That's not a myth. The facts: there is no evidence supporting the idea that the 2014 Maidan revolution in Ukraine that led to the ouster of then Viktor Yanukovych was a coup orchestrated by Western. Of course, there's plenty of evidence. In fact, we proved it. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, they don't even argue very well for their point. I mean, they don't even spend much time arguing for it. They just insist. We insist that there was no U.S. control or direction. And we actually expect you to be as stupid as we want you to be because we want to control you. We want you to be mind slaves to our agenda. I mean, that's what it is. So you could even just forget about the board of advisors and all the partners who are actively trying to use Ukraine as like a launching pad for World War III. Just forget about that and look at the content on Newsguard's site. It's just open misinformation and propaganda that isn't even well argued. And they're the ones who get to rate the trustworthiness of media. Well, it's no wonder they gave CNN their highest rating.
No wonder. So these guys are just stooges for the military-industrial complex and the establishment. That's all.
And Big Pharma.
That's what a guy like that is. He's a stooge. He's the, he's why I got a kick out, out of exposing.
Their biggest they're one of their biggest funders, or the kind of rainmaker for Newsguard was a public relations firm called Publicis, and Publicis is currently being sued for illegally marketing opioids for Purdue Pharma of the Sackler family.
Really?
So basically, the marketing arm of one of the worst mass murderers in recent American history was leading fundraising efforts for Newsguard. They are, as I said, they are directly shilling for Big Pharma.
Of course they are. All right. Well, hey, good luck with your rating.
Thank you. I look forward to the red badge of honor from people who should be in jail.
I mean, we haven't gotten a letter, Misha, like that. We haven't gotten an email. Why don't they do that to us? Maybe it's in there now. I mean, we're just be
careful what you wish for.
We're just as bad as you guys are. I mean, I try to be anyway. I don't know.
I thought Obama was kind of referring to you in his speech. There's a part where he said that some people they just go right up against the line, but you can't boot them off there. They just go up against the line, and YouTube keeps them on there because they've got so many viewers and they want to make a profit from them, and we got to handle that. So we got to
handle that.
I mean, those weren't his exact words. I'm paraphrasing, but he did say that.
Yeah. Well, I'm flattered if the president is aware of me. That would be something.
Going right up against the line. Look,
who else is going right up against the line besides you and me on YouTube?
We got to move the line. Got to take that red line and look. We tortured some folks. We censored some folks.
We tortured those. Yes, that's right.
But we're here together for the better future of tomorrow.
I mean, when Barack Obama gives a speech like that, Max, knowing that the corporate news the trust in corporate news is below politicians almost. I mean, what do they really? I mean, so that's all they have left is censorship because no one will believe the corporate news anymore, right?
They've lost most of the American public, except for its most propagandized, suggestible, and easily duped wing, which are people with advanced degrees who have skin in the imperial game. But the rest of the public, like normal people, they actually like lower production values, good faith conversations between people with different views. They like what you have to offer. They don't care. They hate the kind of phoniness of CNN and they don't trust them. And so that's why the censorship is getting so much harder, and this disinformation paranoia has completely consumed the American elite because they want to wipe out the grassroots media that has captured the American public, that the American public wants, because no one wants what they have to offer. I mean, they have nothing left. They cannot produce good content.
We're doing live stand-up shows in Cleveland, Columbus, Pittsburgh, Des Moines, Omaha, Kansas City, Las Vegas, all over the country. Go to jimmydorecomedy.com for a link for tickets. And single tickets now available at all venues. So if you tried to buy one before and you couldn't, single tickets are now available. Plus, while you're at jimmydorecomedy.com, why don't you become a premium member? Sign up to our mailing list so when they cancel us, we can still stay in touch.